What happens when Hollywood's darling steps into a den of vipers? Well, get ready to find out exactly what happened when Brad Pitt sat down with The View for what was intended to be a standard press junket, and instead found himself in the middle of a televised feeding frenzy. Pleasantries were exchanged for a fleeting moment, but within minutes the vibe had shifted from casual chat to all-out verbal assault that left the audience stunned, and one of the biggest movie stars in the world walking off a live television show. Before we dissect each excruciating moment of this shocking clash, be sure to hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments below. Are daytime talk show hosts too out of line, or can anything be fair game? You will not want to miss any details of what goes down when 5 women decided to cut one of Hollywood's biggest stars no slack at all. The studio lights were glaringly bright as Brad Pitt made his way to his seat at the iconic curved table. This was supposed to be a quick appearance to promote his latest film blockbuster, but it soon devolved into the most awkward conversation in daytime talk show history. From the get-go, the vibe in the room felt all wrong. There was an electric feeling that permeated through the studio. The tension of the moment had reached a level that was about to boil over under the bright camera lights. But just how far would they go? Well, stay with us. Welcome back to The View, everybody. And we have a special guest here with us today, Brad Pitt, Whoopi Goldberg declared. Her voice was dripping with an edge that sent chills down the audience's spines as she added, "Brad, thank you so much for being with us today. Although I've got to say, we've got some tough questions for you, some that are sure to get under your skin." Brad just leaned forward, utilizing that signature, effortless charm he's been perfecting for over 3 decades. "Well, Whoopi, I'm really here to promote the new movie, so fire away when you're ready," he responded, flashing a disarming smile. "Oh, we are ready," Joy Behar shot back, with a little smirk playing on her lips. "But before we talk about the latest blockbuster, I'm just going to say, there's some chatter going around the internet suggesting that you're becoming a little too obsessed with method acting and that you've actually adopted the role of a perpetual victim, both in your personal life and on screen." The words landed like a ton of bricks on Brad Pitt, and the studio was thrown into a deafening silence. Brad's signature smile quickly wavered and disappeared from his face for a fraction of a second, before he seemed to regain his composure. "I'm not really sure I understand what you're implying by that, Joy," he said evenly. "I think there might be some misconstrued notions concerning—" "There's no misconstrued notions here, Brad," Sonny Hostin interrupted him forcefully, before he could even finish what he was saying. The game was on and the exit was nowhere to be seen. What happened next would change the tone of the interview forever. "I'm talking about the pattern," continued Sonny, her voice firm. "The divorce, the custody battle, the positioning you've taken as the injured party in every single one of these stories. It's getting to be quite a show, don't you think?" Brad's jaw tightened perceptibly, all pretense of charm gone. "I think you are completely misconstruing a private and painful situation," he replied, his tone an octave lower. "I came here to discuss my work and I am not going to be ambushed over my personal life." "Ambush?" Sarah Haynes let out a snort that filled the studio. "Brad, you've built millions off your image, and you are a public figure, not a private citizen. You don't get to decide when you're going to be held accountable for that image." The audience was in a hushed, stunned silence as the room seemed to heat up around the actor. This wasn't your typical lighthearted celebrity softball interview where questions would skim over the most salient aspects of an interviewee's life. The women had come to win, and they were quickly boxing Brad in. "Look, I understand that my life is often in the press, but we have children here. Children who have been deeply impacted by these narratives and the way they are so often twisted and sensationalized." "Now you're concerned about the children?" Alyssa Farah Griffin interrupted, a sharpness in her tone that conveyed deep disapproval. "How convenient, especially considering some of the things we've been hearing about the choices you've been making in relation to them, as well as your spouse, during your marriage." Brad's face turned crimson. "I am not going to sit here and allow you to assassinate my relationship with my children based on tabloid fodder and wild speculation. They were far from done, though." "Tabloid fodder?" Whoopi leaned into the camera, her voice low but aggressive. "Brad, these aren't tabloids. These are court documents. They are testimonies. They are facts that you seem very determined to ignore in your self-serving narrative." The actor's knuckles, white as he clenched his hands in his lap, tightened around the arms of his chair. What is it exactly that you're trying to accomplish here? I agreed to be on this show to promote my film, and hundreds of people have been employed for this project, but instead I'm being subjected to this character assassination. Character assassination? Joy bellowed, her voice a perfect echo of his volume, her tone one of outraged indignation. We're asking questions that are relevant to you in the narrative you've presented to the public. If you're not able to handle them, maybe you shouldn't be conducting press tours. This isn't legitimate journalism, Brad countered sharply, the air between them practically crackling with a tangible and very unusual tension. Would the entire interview collapse at this juncture? The cameras kept rolling as the dispute reached a no-return point. Brad's much-vaunted composure was finally breaking. "This is a hit job disguised as daytime television," he said, with a voice trembling with a mixture of outrage and utter disbelief. Sonny scoffed with no hint of emotion. "Brad, your entire career has been built around you being the good guy, the romantic lead, the good father and husband. But when that image starts to crack, you just can't cope when people ask real questions about who you actually are?" "Facade?" Brad exclaimed, his voice booming with undeniable and raw anger. "Do you think 30 years in this industry has been a facade? Do you think the work that I have put in, the causes I have fought for, and the foundation I've built mean absolutely nothing?" "We think you are very good at managing your image," Sarah stated flatly. "At least until you aren't. Until you drop the facade and we see the real truth of who is really under there." The studio audience was deafeningly silent, sensing that they were in fact witnessing an event that would go down in the history of the show. It had become clear that the presenters were working together and each had clearly taken their turn, launching blows upon Brad's defenses, making him stand up for more than just recent events, but the past 30 years of his working life and indeed his entire character and personality. "What do I see?" Alyssa fired back. "I see a man that has spent so many years in the business playing characters that he's forgotten how to be real, how to be authentic, and how to have real conversations. You have two beautiful children that you are so proud of and who your work was all supposed to be for. Why don't you take some responsibility and stop playing the victim?" The breaking point had clearly been reached, and as Brad got up, the chair scraping against the floor in a deafening crack, his eyes ablaze with fury, he said, "I am not playing anything. I am a human being, going through the most terrible ordeal of my life, and I've come on this show in good faith to speak about my work and not to have it thrown back in my face like a punching bag." "Sit down, Brad," Whoopi said with the authority of someone accustomed to total dominance and command. "We aren't finished here." "As a matter of fact, you are finished," Brad replied, with a voice cracking with pent-up anger. "You are finished attacking me, finished attacking my family, and you are finished with pretending that this is journalism." The air in the room had become so thick that it was suffocating. An innocent interview for The View had taken a devastating and personal turn, becoming not just volatile, but also venomous and vindictive as the presenters were clearly refusing to back down and Brad had finally reached the end of his tether. If you thought the drama had peaked then, think again. Because what happened next truly did stun everyone in the room and millions of viewers at home. "Oh," Joy scoffed, turning her back. "You're leaving?" Joy's words sliced through the air of the studio like a razor. "That's what you do, isn't it, Brad? When the heat gets on, when the uncomfortable questions start being asked, you just bolt. Just like you bolted from your marriage." Brad stopped in his tracks, his back still to the panel. He felt the words hit him like a punch to the gut. A collective gasp swept through the studio audience as he turned slowly, his jaw tight, his eyes blazing. "I beg your pardon?" His voice was low and dangerous, the kind of quiet that always precedes the thunder. "You heard me," Joy continued, emboldened by the stunned silence. "This is how you operate, Brad. Things get messy, people demand answers, and you vanish. You hide behind your lawyers. You hide behind your publicists. You run from the truth like it's a pack of rabid dogs." Whoopi, nodding slowly, added, "She's right, Brad. You can't keep running from these difficult conversations, especially when you've caused people harm." "Caused people harm?" Brad took a step back, his whole demeanor shifting. The charming movie star vanished, replaced by something raw and terrifyingly angry. "You want to talk about causing people harm? Let's talk about what you're doing to me right now. You brought me on here under false pretenses, and you're conducting a public lynching in front of millions of people." "A lynching?" Sonny's voice, as if on cue, spiked with outrage. "Really, Brad? That's the word you're going to use? Do you have any idea how offensive that is? Don't you dare. Brad's voice cracked with emotion. Don't you dare twist my words around to make me the villain here. You know exactly what I meant. The air in the studio crackled with tension, but the panel wasn't letting up. Alyssa leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with predatory glee. Actually, I think it's quite revealing that you leaped straight to that particular metaphor. It certainly sheds light on how you view yourself, always the victim, even when you're the instigator of the pain. The studio audience was silent now, captivated by the drama unfolding before them. A drama that was way beyond the pale of regular television. Back in the control room, producers were in a mad frenzy trying to decide if they should cut to a commercial. But the ratings? They were astronomical. No one was going to miss a second of this. You know nothing about my pain, Brad said, his voice cracking. You know nothing about having your own children turned against you, having your entire private life picked apart and weaponized. You know nothing about losing everything you hold dear. And whose fault is that? Sarah's voice was like chipped ice. Who made the choices that led you to that situation? Who decided that his needs were more important than his family's? Brad's hands were trembling. Whether from rage or some deeper, buried emotion was impossible to tell. You think you know the whole story based on what you've read in the gossip rags, he whispered, staring down the 5 women who had turned his promotional tour into an inquisition. He was standing on the edge of a precipice, and what he said next would either save him or shatter him into a million irreparable pieces. Stay tuned. The climax is one you have to hear to believe. You think you know the dynamics of a marriage, the politics of a family, from what legal papers were leaked for the sole purpose of humiliating me? Brad choked out to the panel. I think we know enough, Whoopi said, her voice low, her tone one of finality. We know that your wife needed you when she was in a crisis and you weren't there. We know that your children needed you to be there, and you chose not to be. We know that you have spent far more time maintaining your image than taking care of the responsibilities that you were placed under. That's not true, Brad said, his voice beginning to waver, lose its punch. The sustained, calculated attack was getting to him, slowly, deliberately breaking down the very last layer of his defenses. Is it not? Joy questioned, hearing his falter. Because it really does seem like you've spun all of your failures as the latest one-man PR spectacle. Woe is me. I'm just a poor man abandoned by a vindictive ex-wife. Woe is me. I'm just a sad dad who is denied access to his innocent children by an unreasonably malicious woman. Woe is me. I'm just an all-around nice guy who just needs everyone to let me move on with my life. Please stop, Brad whispered. The reality is, Sonny said, refusing to back down. You're not the one being victimized here. Your children are the victims. Your ex-wife is the victim. Those are the people whose lives were turned upside down because of the choices that you've made, while you played the misunderstood martyr genius for your legions of adoring fans. The energy in the studio began to crackle. Would Hollywood's Golden Boy's perfect image shatter on live television? Brad finally lost control. You do not have any right to speak about my children. You do not have any right to feign any understanding of what any of us went through. We absolutely do, Alyssa exclaimed, matching his volume. Because you put it out there, and you turned our lives and business into your own little Hollywood production. I never, Brad began, but Whoopi interrupted before he could string words together. Never what? Never used your looks and connections to ensure that your version of events would be the only one told? Never manipulated the media and used your friendships with magazine editors and producers to control the narrative? Don't take us for fools, Brad. We've all got years of experience in this. The attack was coordinated, systematic, and brutal. Each host continued to lay out a new accusation while Brad became increasingly trapped and outmaneuvered. The tactics of charming, diverting, and movie star mystique weren't working against this coordinated, focused dismantling of his persona. Do you know what is truly pathetic? Sarah asked, her tone laced with utter contempt. You came here believing you could win over the panel with a slick soundbite, some generic answers about the art, and walk away with everything exactly the way you always do. Well, you are not walking away clean today. She leaned in, her gaze fixed firmly on his. This is harassment, Brad screamed, a raw, unfiltered emotion finally coming through in his voice. an emotion that none of his devoted fans had ever witnessed. When the world's most beloved movie star hits his emotional breaking point, the world has never been less prepared for what is to come next, and in this instance, the change occurred in the blink of an eye. "This is harassment," Brad stated with a wavering voice. "This is not what real journalism is supposed to look like." "This is called accountability," Joy snapped back with a fierce glare. "Something that you seem to have been running away from for a very, very long time." The audience sat completely spellbound. This was no longer a hot interview. This was a live evisceration of a Hollywood heavyweight. But the panelists were not through yet. They could sense their prey bleeding, and they were closing in. What happened next would be the final straw for Brad, causing an explosion that would go down in television history. "Do you know what's the most sickening part of all of this?" Whoopi asked, reclining back with a cold, predatory smile on her face. "It is watching a grown man cry about being attacked, when there are actual victims who do not have access to $1 million legal team to cover up their messes." Brad's face turned white. "How dare you? How dare I what?" Whoopi retorted. "Tell the truth? The truth is, Brad, you have had everything that has ever been good for you all of your life, and you still found a way to avoid the ramifications for the hurt that you've caused. Now you want to sit on our show and beg for sympathy?" Joy agreed with a knowing nod of her head. "You want us to feel bad about your fabricated image crumbling down around you." "My image?" Brad's voice grew to a dangerous pitch. "You think this is about my image? You think that losing my family is about PR?" "I think that everything is about PR with you," Sonny responded coldly. "You have lived in such a bubble for so long, managing your career, that you have forgotten how to function as a person. And now you're having to deal with actual consequences and you don't know how?" The atmosphere in the room felt as if it were brittle enough to shatter. But Alyssa was poised with the fatal blow. "Let's be honest here, Brad," Alyssa stated with control, seizing the opportune moment. "Your children want nothing to do with you, not because of a manufactured scandal or legal threats, but because they know the man you are behind the scenes when the cameras are off." The words landed like a blow to Brad's face. His entire face contorted in a rage fueled by pain, and he actually looked as if the most famous man in the world was about to completely lose his cool on live television. He was speechless, but his eyes said it all. This was the end of Brad Pitt's golden boy status. What was for sure is that after this night nothing would ever be the same. "You don't know my children," he whispered, pure venom in his tone. "You have no idea what my relationship with my children is all about." "We know enough," Sarah countered with absolutely no mercy in her voice. "We know that when they finally had the choice, when they finally grew up, and they could make the decision for themselves, that they chose not to associate with you. So what does that tell you about you as a father?" That's when Brad snapped. His complexion went from pale white to red, and he could no longer maintain that smooth, composed, actor persona movie star. Brad Pitt was officially dead. "Enough!" he bellowed, the sound reverberating off the studio walls so much that audience members jumped in their seats. "I'm done! I'm done with all of you!" But sensing they'd gotten Brad right where they wanted him, the co-hosts continued to press on. "Are you going to storm out again?" Joy taunted, her tone laced with a heavy dose of sarcasm. "Like you stormed out of your responsibilities as a husband and as a father. This is what you do, isn't it?" Whoopi chimed in with an over-the-top expression of concern. "When you are challenged, when people no longer play the game and believe your carefully constructed persona, you throw a tantrum and you leave." Brad then stood up so vigorously that he knocked his chair over behind him. It fell back onto the studio floor with a loud thud that echoed like a gunshot through the entire room. "You want to know what I think?" Brad said, his voice sounding primitive and raw, every bit of his Hollywood polish completely gone. "I think that all of you people are just bitter, jealous human beings who thrive on tearing people down because you feel bad about your own pathetic lives." The audience audibly gasped. This was not the Brad Pitt they knew from their movie screens or from walking down the red carpet. This was a man on the edge of a cliff lashing out at anyone within reach. "Bitter?" Sonny said, rolling her eyes and letting out a snicker. "We aren't the people who ruined our own family and spent years trying to convince everyone that it was everyone else's fault." "You don't know what the hell you are talking about," Brad yelled, his voice cracking with pure rage as he completely lost control of himself. "You all sit here in your safe little worlds judging people you have never even met, destroying people's lives for your own entertainment. "We're destroying people's lives," Alyssa shouted back, raising her voice to match Brad's. "You destroyed your own life, Brad. You destroyed your marriage. You damaged your own children, and now you are going to blame the world for calling you out." Brad was trembling with uncontrollable rage, his fists balled up into white-knuckled balls at his sides. "You are pathetic pieces of human garbage," he sneered. "All of you. You pretend to be journalists, but you're nothing but vultures feasting on others' pain. And you," Joy said, delivering the final blow, "are nothing but a has-been actor who can't deal with the fact that his perfect image has finally been exposed as a lie." The room fell silent, and it was the loudest sound in the world. The golden boy had been stripped of everything, and the entire world was watching it unfold. In that instant, the interview wasn't over. It was instantly etched in television history. "Yes," shot back Joy with vindictive pleasure. It was over. The last straw had shattered what little self-control Brad still had. "You know what?" Brad's tone shifted. It became quiet, resonating, a low thrum more unnerving than his former yelling. "You're right about one thing. I am done running from hard conversations, so let's have one now." He leaned forward, his palms flat on the table, and locked eyes with each host in turn. His gaze was glacial. "You want to talk about accountability? Let's talk about what you're doing right now. You invite someone onto your show with the express purpose of launching a coordinated character assassination, an assassination that has nothing to do with informing your viewers and everything to do with humiliating and destroying them. You have turned a private family matter, with children involved, into fodder for cheap entertainment." Brad was starting to raise his voice again, but this was not the uncontrolled rage of before. It was precise, sharp-edged fury. "You talk about journalism, but this isn't journalism. This is sadism. This is a public stoning, a slow-motion train wreck disguised as daytime talk television. And every single one of you is a participant." Whoopi attempted to interject. "Brad, if you're unable to handle—" "No!" Brad brought his fist down on the table with a deafening crash, the water glasses rattling. "You will not speak. You have said enough. You have shown this audience and yourself who you really are, and it's infinitely uglier than anything you've accused me of being." The studio was eerily quiet. The only noise was the ragged gasping of Brad's breath. Even the panel was struck dumb by his words, stunned by the force and truth behind them. "You want to know what the real tragedy here is?" Brad continued, his voice booming to fill the space. "It's that you had an opportunity to have a genuine, real discussion about accountability, about personal growth, about what it means to make a mistake and then endeavor to do better. And you chose cruelty instead. You chose to take my pain and use it as sport." He stood up straight, his hands still trembling as he smoothed his shirt. "I'm not going to grant you that satisfaction any longer. I will not stand here while you exploit my deepest pain to enhance your program's ratings." Brad turned to leave, but hesitated, glancing back at the panel one last time. "I truly hope that one day all of you look back on this interview and feel the deep shame that you should be feeling right now. I hope that you remember that there is a human being standing in front of you, not a caricature, not an enemy, but a human being with children and people who love him. And I hope that all of your viewers recognize precisely the sort of journalism you've chosen to engage in today." He turned on his heel and walked off the set, leaving the most powerful panel on television sitting in the crushing, humiliated silence.